So, anxiety. In some countries, they created a new term called ethnopsychology or ethnophysiology. But these two terms does not appear in the medical dictionary of all countries or cultures. Only certain groups of people invented these two terms. Depends on the culture, the social context of that country, of that society. It means ideas about our bodily system. Oh, that's a typo. Whatever. And these are how people in different parts of the country perceive anxiety. According to this article, Cambodians, they focus on one symptom of anxiety, the tightness and soreness in the leg. And they associate anxieties with wind attacks, which is partly correct. Anxieties has something to do with wind, or the blockage of our tubes, our veins. But in informal languages of the Cambodians, they use tubes. It means veins. So according to Cambodians, anxiety is the blockage of tubes that carry blood. So anxiety, according to Cambodians, are essentially the blockage of veins. And there may be some vein occupied in those veins that causes those blockage. And this is how the Chinese perceive anxiety. It's an organ dysfunction. It's due to a weak kidney. It's also partly right. Chinese focus on another aspect of anxiety. And this is how people in most Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Brunei, Philippines, these are all members of the Southeast Asian countries. This is how we traditionally view anxiety. Southeast Asian, most of them are Buddhists, so they focus on saving face, avoiding embarrassment, and because of that, Southeast Asians, or even Asians in general, they tend to be more anxious, according to Asians or Southeast Asians. East Asians have the same mindset too. They think that their group of people tend to be more anxious. So this is how Southeast Asians perceive anxiety. They think their group tend to be more anxious because they want to avoid embarrassment. It's a group-oriented culture. They want to save face. They focus on dignity, propriety. Yet another different perception of anxiety, even though these are all Asians. And this is how Puerto Ricans and Dominicans view anxiety. They invented another word called ataki. I don't know how to say that. It's an impending loss of control. Ataki is also characterized by chest tightness, heat in the body, palpitations, shaking in the arms and legs, feelings of imminent fainting. So those are the symptoms associated with anxiety, covered by the word ataki. The word is invented by Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, and not every society, every culture, every group has the word ataki. Some cultures have the word ethnopsychology or ethnophysiology. So as you can see from these 4 or 5 examples, different groups perceive anxiety differently. And Puerto Ricans and Dominicans also perceive anxiety as a fear of dying from bodily symptoms, or the fear of engaging in behaviors that can result in the loss of control, like suicide or hurting others. So different groups, different culture, as we can see, focus on different aspects associated with anxiety. Any question? And this is somewhere on Canvas. So you may not need to copy this down. And postpartum depression, Punjabi women in South Asia, in Punjab province of India, they perceive the time period after giving birth is a time period of seclusion. They practice social seclusion, where the mother and the baby are secluded from everybody but the female folks. And the purpose of practicing seclusion is to promote breastfeeding, maybe more privacy to the mom and the kid, to limit the mother's normal activities. And when the mom is under seclusion, they are under the care of older children. Usually in South Asian societies, women have a lot of kids, so it's possible. So as you can see from this article, it seems that postpartum depression has no place at all in the Punjabi's dictionary or the Punjabi's medical dictionary. And for Chinese and Nepalese, they have a different perception of postpartum depression. They focus on the period after the baby is born. They are similar to the Punjabi women. They focus on the period after giving birth. They don't emphasize so much for the period from conception to pregnancy. And because Chinese and Nepalese focus on the period after giving birth, they term postpartum depression as mothering of the mother. I think this concept, mothering of the mother, is also implied in the Punjabi's women's dictionary, quote unquote, even though they did not say that explicitly, but essentially, based on the definitions we just read, is essentially mothering of the mother. Mother is secluded from the other folks to concentrate on breastfeeding. So mothering of the mother is also practiced by Punjabi women, even though they do not call it as such. So Chinese and Nepalese associate postpartum depression with mothering of the mother. And Americans, they are different socially, culturally. Americans have a different historical, economic, political context compared to women in Asia. Usually, they don't live with extended family. Americans, y'all don't really live with extended families. Maybe after a woman gives birth, maybe the in-laws or her parents may come to help, but not for long periods of time. It's a different cultural context. It's a different social context. So they perceive postpartum depression differently than Punjabi women and Chinese and Nepalese women. Usually, because of the healthcare system in America, insurance, how insurance operates, mothers go back after 2 to 4 days of giving birth, pretty soon. And they might not have additional help after they go home. And spouse don't have a long break. According to policies from various companies, organizations, husbands, spouse, partners cannot take a long vacation to take care of their wife. So, American women perceive postpartum depression differently. Are we clear? And let's talk about Alzheimer's disease. In Europe and America, sometimes the press publish information about this disease, different ideas about Alzheimer's disease or dementia is essentially publicized. But sometimes the way how the media or the press, they write about Alzheimer's or dementia, it seems that it has a negative connotations attached to Alzheimer's disease or dementia. the way it's being portrayed by press or media. According to research from this article with a lot of authors, Alzheimer's is perceived in the West as patients who are zombie-like, and those patients should be feared. The press and the media in the West perceive dementia and Alzheimer's disease as if these conditions are being stigmatized. We should shine away from the patient. The patient are zombies. Too bad, so sad. This is how the West perceive Alzheimer's disease. But this was decades ago. Now things change. There's a switch in how press and media portrays Alzheimer's. Now they focus on fighting the stigma, which is better, and try to maybe have doctors, health professionals write in their columns or whatnot to talk about the disease, to increase the public understanding of that disease. So, as you can see with the recent switch, the social perception of Alzheimer's disease changed to some extent in the West, which is good. So as you can see from Europe and America, social construction of illness can change over time and context. We just saw that from Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Are we clear? And in Africa, Congo, people are not aware of the disease. They are rarely diagnosed. So people rarely get treated for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. They just perceive Alzheimer's disease and dementia as a natural part of aging. And some perceive that as a contested illness. In countries like Congo, maybe medical community in Congo determine that the etiologies associated with Alzheimer's and dementia have not been ascertained yet. So they leave that as a contested illness in that region. They just perceive them as a memory and cognitive function loss. Are we clear? And this is how South Africans perceive Alzheimer's disease. They say that dementia, they don't focus on Alzheimer's per se. We all know that Alzheimer's is a very specific case of dementia. Don't believe me? Consult Dr. Google. So, South Africans perceive dementia as a result of witchcraft and sorcery. Yet, another different social construction of health in different continents of the world. Are we clear? In Asia, people with Alzheimer's disease are perceived as silly, crazy, catatonic. They are perceived as deviant, outcasts. Alzheimer's disease are perceived in a negative light in South Africa and Asia, but they focus on different aspects, different negative aspects of that disease. Chinese, one Asian group, perceive Alzheimer's disease as one psychiatric illness. Because the Chinese culture focuses on filial piety, caring for the elderly parents. So sometimes, even though it's perceived as psychiatric disorder, they say it's a very important disorder because elderly are being revered in that society. Yet another different construction of health and illness portrayed by the Chinese society. So as we can see, the disease reputation is configured differently in the Chinese society. So are we clear about Alzheimer's? Epilepsy. So Americans, maybe they are more advanced. Industrial revolution happens in Britain first. Some say it happens in France first. Historians, there are different versions, but it doesn't matter. It happened in Western Europe first. And that notion, that idea, spread when all these immigrants from Western Europe, they sailed through their ships and boats to the American continents. So America developed way before other Asian countries. And because of that, they have a more modern, sophisticated definition of epilepsy. They perceive epilepsy as inappropriate synchronized discharge of brain cells. Their definition of epilepsy is more scientifically grounded, as we can see. Asians perceive epilepsy as madness. As you can see, it's less scientifically grounded than the Americans' definition of epilepsy. Their etiologies are more clearly ascertained in America. Laos. People from Laos perceive epilepsy as the touch of saliva of an epileptic person. If someone accidentally touched the saliva of the epileptic, he or she may get sick. So, Laos perceive epilepsy as a contagious disease, yet another perception. And the prevention undertaken by people in Laos would be to eat alone, to play safe, eat alone. And Vietnamese, they don't really focus on epilepsy per se. They focus on one particular symptom of epilepsy, seizure. They consider seizure as the stress on the brain. So all these Asian countries, their definitions of epilepsy or their perceptions of epilepsy is a lot less scientifically grounded compared to Americans. Are we clear? Diabetes. The Thais perceive diabetes as an imbalance between the fire and the water. The Thais are very similar to Chinese. It's just located in the southern part of China, neighboring countries. So they have the same perception for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And Thais have another informal name for diabetes, sweet urine. And we have the same term in Chinese too, sweet urine. And maybe because they were less medically advanced compared to the Westerners, when they discovered symptoms associated with sweet urine, that's how they quote-unquote diagnose whether somebody is diabetic or not. Sorry to gross you up. I know, maybe traditionally, the bathrooms in Asia, they consist of latrines. I don't know if you have seen latrines somewhere on the internet or somewhere else. Latrines, the squat toilets. And hundreds of years ago, or even decades ago, in the 30s, 40s or 50s, there may not be any flush toilets or flush latrines in all parts of Thailand. So, sorry to gross you up. So maybe people, even lay person, can diagnose whether that person has diabetes if that person just used the bathroom, the latrines. Sorry to gross you up. If they see ants swarming around the urine, oh, that person could be diabetic, they figure. It's not very scientific, we all know that. And prevention is challenging in Thailand when it comes to diabetes because they eat a lot of carbs, especially rice. And because the majority of Thais are Buddhists, more than 80%. So they believe in the natural process of healing. And because, like Chinese, Vietnamese, like other Asians, They practice filial piety. Sometimes they perceive diabetes as a natural process of aging. They don't do anything about it, but they don't stigmatize that person either, because elderly tend to be more prone to have diabetes and they are more revered in many Asian societies. They don't do anything about it, yet they don't stigmatize, because elderlies are being revered. Are we clear? But some Buddhists also believe that diabetes is due to bad karma. Maybe a person has diabetes because he or she did something bad in his or her past life. And in the US, we all know the way to diagnose diabetes is a lot more scientific. They use blood tests. And when somebody has frequent urination, the person may suspect that he or she has diabetes and seek treatment. So, as you can see from this slide, the perception of diabetes is vastly different between Americans and Thais. Are we clear?